Hi.
What's up, New York?
Morning.
Does everyone get their picks? We're so excited to be here with you today, talking about money first thing in the morning, as we should.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Cindy, I actually want to start with you because I have been reading about you for a number of years since you famously convinced your boss, Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff, that he needed to close the gender wage gap at your company, which
Former company.
which was going to cost him $10.3 million. And he wrote in his book that you told him at the time, quote, "We can either lead on pay equity or we can follow. We're not a company that follows." So how did you, A, figure out there was a wage gap? And B, how do you basically convince your boss to spend $10 million to close it?
Well, before we do that, can we just give her a freaking round of applause? Thank you. I speak for all of us.
So I want to kind of tell the story because it wasn't just me. It was a personal friend of mine who was a product executive at Salesforce. She's no longer there as well, Layla Seka. And, good, there's some Layla fans in here. And her and I had been friends for over 20 years, pre-Salesforce. And we both elevated in the company at the same time. We both got bigger jobs. I got the head of HR job, reporting to Mark, and she also elevated in the product world. And we started putting our heads together to really talk about, once you kind of elevate as a woman inside the company, more women come to you. And they ask for advice, they ask for counsel, they ask for advocacy, championing. And her and I were talking to a lot of people inside the company, a lot of women inside the company, and we knew there were issues that still needed to be solved, right? Whether it was promotion, whether it was about hiring, whether it was about retention, and whether it was about pay. And the truth of the matter is, employees now talk to one another, right? It used to be back in the days 10 years ago where you were told, don't talk about your money, right? It's inappropriate to speak about your pay. But that's not true anymore. And what we started to realize is we probably had a problem. And I hadn't done a secret assessment, I had a one-on-one coming up with Mark, was part of my regular cadence. I didn't define the agenda. I didn't tell him I was inviting Layla to the meeting. And I just we practiced it together, Layla and I did. We practiced the pitch. We anticipated the questions. We anticipated if he said no. And we said, if he says no, we're gonna feel like it's our own personal failure, right? Like, of course, we take it on, it's our fault. So we went in there, we did the pitch, and he said, he started to ask questions. Do we have a problem, right? I said, Mark, I have not done a secret assessment. Like, I can't tell you there's a big dollar sign. I don't know, but there are two things you need to do if you sign up to do this, which I hope you do, because it is the right thing to do, is you can't do this one and done type situation. We do this, we do it every single year, because I don't know of any company out there that has flawless processes when it comes to hiring and promotion and retention. If you do, great. You should be writing books and be on the speaking circuit. And the other thing I said to him, which was really, really important, I think this is something that CEOs have a little trepidation about, which is we can't do the assessment and see a huge dollar sign and walk away, right? You can't open the hood, see it, and shut the hood. Like, you just can't do that. So he said, let's do it. We're in. And that's how it started. And I think, more importantly, I think it opened the door for women to feel safe to then ask about their pay, because I started to see it more and more about them questioning certain things. Maybe they got more responsibility, but they didn't get a comp adjustment. So in many ways, maybe Layla and I made it feel like it's now a safe environment for them to ask.
Did it help to have Layla with you? There seems a power in numbers sense to this.
There were a couple reasons, because I didn't want it to be an HR message, right? I didn't want, Cindy, the head of HR, sitting down with Mark Benioff to talk about this. I really wanted it to be about two women who had power, had influence, and wanted to share some ideas. And one of them was pay, and then we had other ideas about a leadership development program or ways we can really put some principles and guiding principles in there. And the other one was parental leave. And we were at I think, barely 3 months, and it's now at 6 months, which I'm really happy about. I would like to see men be forced to take a certain amount of parental leave as well. And hopefully whoever's in my shoes now will take that baton and move it forward. But there were just a lot of things that we wanted. So, her and I did it together. And yeah, I do think there's sometimes with women safety in numbers, right? And maybe it was yes, Layla and I had the ideas and we did it together, which is great. But sometimes I do feel like if you're on a team or you're within a community and you're all going forward, it's more influential there. And you do feel more comfortable, right? So,
Abby, I think most people in this room know who you are. You led the U.S. women's soccer team to a World Cup. Title. You also scored more goals in your career than any person, not just women. So, one might look at you and think wow, you must be worth a lot in terms of pay. And talent, obviously. And yet, you were not making what you should have. When did you realize that?
Yeah, so a few years after I retired, or a few months after I retired in 2015, ESPN called and they decided that they wanted to give me what's called the SB Icon Award. And they wanted to give it to two other men as well, Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning. Do you know them? I had never heard of them. No, so, originally, of course, on the phone call, I was so grateful, feeling so honored, truly. And I found myself on stage with them a few weeks later at the ESPYs, and this gratitude that I was feeling on stage, which is so often the only emotion women are allowed. I was just sitting there and I was taking it in and so grateful. And then all three of us turned to walk off stage and something completely different happened to me. This rage started to bubble to the top. And I got home and I couldn't figure it out because this was supposed to be the best night of my life, I couldn't figure out what the hell just happened. My career was over. Why was I upset? This is supposed to be a celebratory night. And I was Jerry Maguiring it in the hotel, trying to figure out what it was. And, like most women do, what did I do wrong here? And what I realized is the three of us walked into three very different retirements. We all shed the same amount of blood, sweat, and tears. We all sacrificed the same amount. And Kobe and Peyton's biggest concern was where they were going to invest their hundreds of millions of dollars. And mine was how I was going to reinvent myself and find a new career so that I could pay my mortgage. True story. And I fancied myself, y'all. I played for the United States. I won gold medals and World Cups and so I realized then that night, okay, if this is happening to me, this is happening to every woman on the planet. And so I promised myself two things that night. One, Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe would not share this experience that I just had. And that, two, I would do everything I could to level the playing field by going out and talking about leadership principles and talking about this because information is everything, right? And talking about our salaries and talking about my experience and talking about other women's experience, that is how we make change. That's how we get forward in our world. So that was the moment I realized I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and here I am.
My therapist always tells me that rage is a very motivating emotion.
My wife says that there's nothing better in the world than a bunch of women who are pissed off. There's no better people that get shit done than pissed off women.
So you mentioned the women that came after you. The women's team has now sued FIFA. They make something like 38 cents to their male counterparts' dollar. And it's not because they bring in less for the organization. How involved were you in thinking about that suit? And what has changed in those 2 years that allowed them to do this?
Well, let me be clear. The women's team is suing U.S. soccer. And FIFA is a different situation. FIFA is the governing body of football around the world. All of the national governing bodies around the world, they pay into FIFA, and FIFA runs all of the sanction events, the Olympics and the World Cup. Throughout my career, we were always in negotiation with U.S. Soccer. And in to their credit, U.S. Soccer has dedicated more resources to our women's team than any other federation in the world. But it's just not enough, right? So I want to qualify the fact that they are the leaders of the world as it relates to resources given to the team. And one of the biggest debates that I hear is, well, the men's team brings in more money. They earn more sponsorship dollars, more TV rights dollars than the women's team. And so, of course, the men's team should make more money. Well, let me tell you the actual truth. In 2016 to 2019, our women's national team brought in more money for the United States than our men's team. And that's just a fact. That's just a fact. So, you know, when all of the men in your life tell you this thing, you now have something to go back to them with. And you know, we're also talking about a non-for-profit venture. The U.S. Soccer is a nonprofit, and their goal, their mission is to grow the game. It's not to just grow the men's game based on how much money and how many dollars we get. It's actually to grow the game. Now, what doesn't get talked about, and this is the way that it is in the whole world. We're not just talking about pay. The lawsuit is not just about pay. It is about equality through and through. So pay helps because it gives women confidence. It gives women the ability to go in and ask for more and demand more. That's just a reality. But when we talk about the divvying up of resources that U.S. Soccer has given the men and the women, not enough information gets talked about the potential investment, the original potential investment that gets given to men that does not get given to women. And it's that compound interest. You guys are all finance people. Some of you are. And that compound interest really does make a huge impact. People wonder, why is it taking so long for women's sports, professionally speaking, to actually take off? And it's because that initial investment. So in 1994, there were original investors for the MLS, Major League Soccer, and they knew that they were going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And 20 years later, you see a league now that in order to get into the league, you have to pay $120 million per team just to be a part of the MLS. So that investment never is given to women, ever. And so people wonder, well, why are you, where are we? Why are you a New York Yankees fan? Why are you a Mets fan? And the amount of money that has been spent into creating a lifelong habit of a fan, the lifelong, like that blood that runs through maybe your family, we're talking about trillions of dollars that have been spent. And that kind of investment just does not get given to women. And that is what we have to also keep talking about. It's the marketing dollars. It's that original investment that will compound down the road. So for me, a win for our women's national team, though it is a nonprofit venture, a win for our women's national team is a win for all women everywhere, because part of the problem that we see around the world is that people don't see other women demanding what they deserve. And they hear about it, but they don't see it. And when you see other women demanding what they deserve and winning, then that gives you the confidence, that gives you the right, that gives you the belief that you can go into your work and demand what you deserve as well.
I think there's certainly a lot more talk about pay today. Pay transparency is an issue. We're here discussing it. But I think there are also a lot of women who still feel uncomfortable talking about money. Either, it's still viewed in some weird way as unladylike, or it's like cute to not get it. Like there's that famous Sex and the City scene where she's like, I don't know, I spent it all on shoes. So, what were your relationships like with money growing up? When did you become comfortable talking about money? Do you remember how you spent your first paycheck or the first time you asked for a raise? Cindy, let's start with you.
So, I kind of feel like I grew up in a very non-traditional household. My parents grew up in a very small border town in Texas. And before they had me, they moved to Northern California. My father never graduated from high school. My mother never went to college. And when they came to Northern California, my dad had a very blue-collar kind of 8-to-4 job so he could be home with my brother and I and have some stability. And my mom started working in an insurance company when her male manager said, I think you can do more, and kind of helped her and guided her. And she went for her real estate license, and she spent 35 years in real estate, and very, very successful. And it allowed my brother and I to have the best of everything. She was the breadwinner. My father, though, these are two of the hardest working parents ever, and taught my brother and I about work ethic. But they also kind of said, my mom said to me, well, don't assume you're always going to get paid for the work that you're doing. You're going to have to fight for it every step of the way. You're Hispanic. You're going to encounter some biases as you go through school, which I did. I went to a very white, affluent high school. And I was known as the commuter kid, right? I was the one commuting I didn't live in the area. So money was always this thing where I needed to understand. But at the same time, in my career, I'm an introvert. So when I got my first paycheck, or when I was told I was getting promoted for the first time, or when I was told, hey, here's your merit increase for the year, my response was always thank you, because I was grateful, right? Because that's always the thing. You feel a sense of gratitude. You never question anything. So I think now as time has moved on, and in my own career, I knew I was paid less. And as, I moved up the ranks, this became an issue that I know if I'm feeling it, so many others are feeling it. So I think, it was something where I didn't know. And I didn't know if it was permissible to know, to understand what was going on. And I think, having grown up in kind of that non-traditional household always made me feel like, well, if my mother did it, I can do it, right? And she fought for everything. She had that rage thing. And so I think having these two role models helped me. It wasn't like someone was really guiding me early in my career. It was more, no, you take it, you say thank you, and you don't question it. And, obviously in my role in HR, as I'll just take it to kind of more recent, the amount of men that would talk about what they deserve, why they should be making more, recognition. I mean, it was just like astounding. but I hardly had any women coming to me and talking about that.
It's always so fascinating to hear
Right?
that from the HR perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Who can actually say, yes, many people came in to ask.
But then I reflected on my own, and I'm like, well, I'm not really talking about everything I've done or I've achieved, because it's like, well, you're not supposed to self-promote, right? But then I'm like, oh my God, look at all these men that are doing it, and they're getting rewarded for it. So then I'm like, no, we should talk about everything we did. Layla and I did a great thing at Salesforce. We feel like ballers a little bit.
Well, I also think what's really important is that all of us women have been made to believe certain things about the way that we're supposed to operate in the world. That it's not ladylike, or we're going to be too emotional, but if we were to actually compare ourselves to what men do, it's blatantly obvious. And it's this whole idea, and it's very insidious, but this idea that everything that you have been given as a woman has been given to you rather than you've earned it. And that's a very big mental shift that we women have to make. It's like, no, God, I have earned that shit. I've earned it. You didn't give me anything. I've earned it. And when we start thinking in those terms, then we're going to start actually believing the stuff that we have is, in fact, ours, and we deserve it.
And if I can add one thing to that, because you're so right on this too, you hear a lot about diversity data amongst companies, right? Everyone's trying to move the needle, everyone's trying to show progress. And one thing I always said inside Salesforce was, yes, it's good to know the data, but it's what you do with that data and how you act upon it. Women don't want to be known as they helped move the number, right? You have to articulate, why did they get promoted? Why did they get invited to a meeting? Because we want to know that we earned our right to be there, right?
Well, and I think our women's national team, just to answer the original question, we always stuck together. We were a unit. And for better or worse, we didn't get along with every single one of each other, right? Let's be honest. But we knew that the only way forward, the way to the most efficient and best negotiation and the best CBA that we could possibly get, is if we never broke, is if we never fractured. And I think that and it helped you in your meeting with Mark to get what you needed to be. Sometimes it is everything to have somebody on your right or your left that is allowing you to stand a little bit taller. Because the truth is, all of us we all have sexism inside of us. We just do, right? The other day, I texted my agent, and I'm doing some work at a college, and the conversation turned to be about a professor, and I just said, oh, well, what's his name? And he texted me back, and he's like, it's a woman, you asshole. I was like, that's exactly right. Like, I'm supposed to be the wokest woke that ever woked, and here I am. So, and the reason why I tell you this is because we have to constantly check our own self and where we live and where we were raised and how we are operating and interacting in our own life. And we have to watch the words that we use because they matter. We have to watch the things that we talk to ourselves about, our internal dialogue, because it matters. So for me, I think that, early days, I was just glad to make a paycheck, to be being paid to play a game. Like, it felt so bizarre. But now what you see with the team, with Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, knowing that they are a marketable asset, that the corporations, that the world in which they live in is not like, it's not just like the feel good, I'm gonna do the right thing because I've got a daughter. Like the CEO of the company is like, I've got a daughter, so I'm gonna do some stuff with women. Like, they actually know that it's like the smart thing for the bottom line of those companies, so that they have diverse and just and equal products that are being seen by all the people. So I don't really know what the question was that you asked.
It's fine.
But I think I did well.
You did. I want to draw some parallels between sports and corporate life. Because Abby, you're now going into corporations and you are coaching in leadership. There's a study that came out, I think, from Ernst & Young a couple of years ago about how 93% of female CEOs, I think in the Fortune 500, fact check me on that.
It's 97.
Okay, 97, played sports. So there is a connection there. And there are leadership skills that you learn being on a team. Talk a little bit about how you're translating that in the corporate world.
Well, it's really, so the book that I put out in April is called Wolfpack. I don't know if you guys have read it, but all of it, I tried to distill the most important leadership philosophy that I learned from playing on our women's national team, because you can understand how difficult it might be to get 23 type A badass women whom all believe that they themselves are the best one in the world. Like, not an easy task. But I think that what I learned with our women's national team and what I tried to make the corporate world understand is that they are same. We are humans, right? And I am curiously obsessed with corporate culture. I don't know why, but I love it because I think that so often we look at the corporate world and we think, ooh, this is ugly, it's too big, it's too vast, too many problems, it's a lost cause. But that is actually something that I believe that that's what they want you to believe, right? And in order for us to actually infiltrate and affect positive, real change in our world, because all the products, like I think about this a lot, the way that we interact and interface with our worlds, each one of us individually, is affected very much by the corporate world, by the products they create, by the campaigns, by the marketing campaigns that they run, you name it. Your mind shifts in certain ways because of the corporate world. And if the tables at those corporations are not more just, equal, or diverse, then the products themselves that are being created, that are being sent out into the world for us to use and consume, are going to be biased. So all of us are getting affected and programmed in certain ways to skew towards these corporations. So for me, getting into the corporate world and allowing women to understand, one of the most phenomenal things that I've found in running these leadership programs is not about the specific details that athletics was able to allow me to understand leadership in certain ways. It's the idea of unity. And my wife, who's over here, Glennon, she talks about this one story. In carpentry, there is, when you are building a house and you have to put a load on top of what's it called, a joist? Yeah, I'm not a carpenter. But when that load gets to be too much, right, they bring in another board to the right of it and then another board to the left of it. And do you know what that's called? It's called sistering, right? And she would tell this joke better than me, but the carpenters of the world, the guys, they'll be like, it can't be brothering, it's too close. The boards are too close. But the whole point is, our women's national team was always so tight in and around any kind of negotiation. And I think that kind of leadership and allowing women to understand that we can lean on each other and we need each other, right? Whether it's using Slack or whether it's inviting somebody else into a meeting and not informing your boss that person is coming. It's like we need to actually start championing each other rather than competing against each other, right? I think too often we pit ourselves against each other, fighting for those 2 seats at the table of 10, rather than remembering, oh, there's 10 seats at this table. Like, how about we all start, our women's national team are amazing at and truly, genuinely were happy when somebody else was successful. And there's a mindset in that. You have to learn that when somebody else achieves success, even if that person is of the same gender and might be occupying that seat for right now, that's a moment for you that you either get to get jealous or you can turn up your own volume. And why are we so afraid to turn up our own volume? Like, our women's national team was so successful is because when Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe scored goals, I was like, okay, it's my turn. I gotta go. I gotta get better. I gotta be better. Like, we have to be confident enough in ourselves. And the more we did that, the better we got. And that's why our women's national team is the most successful team maybe in the history of all women's sports.
I want to talk about what fuels each of you. Abby, in your book, you have written about how failure actually fuels you. That was surprising to me. Yeah. Cindy, what drives you? What fuels you?
It's a hard question, a little bit. Lots of things fuel me, but it's not, I think trying to make and do good with something, we were just talking backstage, and I spent 13 years at Salesforce, and I moved up the ranks, and I feel really proud of everything I have achieved, right, from a work perspective, from a job perspective. But I'm most proud of that we got the CEO to do equal pay, right? That fueled me. That really drove me. Now, and then I'm like, now what? What's next? And a lot of people have said, what are you going to do next? Are you going to go do HR somewhere else? Are you going to do this? And I've spent some time, because I've been gone since July, and I've spent some time thinking about what is it that I want to do? What is it that is my true passion? And I want to do more around gender and gender equality and really raising some of these issues, because there's so much more to do. We are just we're just not even, we haven't put even a little dent into it. When we talk about equal pay, and we talk about, Mark talking about it or in his book, well, I want like thousands of Marks talking about it, right? Thousands. I hope journalists continue to put this at the forefront. You have an amazing platform to do that, but we're so not done in this area. There's so much more to do, and I know this is still a passion for you. So that's really what fuels me. I had a mentor who's still a friend of mine, male mentor, and he was very key in really developing me in terms of, hey, always be proud of your success. Boast about it. Talk about it. Don't be shy about it. But it's how you deal with criticism and failure that will define you as a leader and as an executive. And that was the best advice he has given me, because I spend more time thinking about failures that we all mess up, right? Or things I could have done better, or criticism that I faced, and how did I deal with it, Did I go and I don't know, just, walk into my room and put the covers over my head and just be like, woe is me? Or did I actually do something about it,
What's an example of a failure? I feel like women don't talk about their failures enough, in part because we probably subconsciously know that we, in fact, research has shown, are judged more harshly when we screw up. And our failures tend to be remembered longer.
I remember failures just in my career where I failed to speak up. And, we talk about women need to speak up, right? Because it's always about what women need to do. Women need to do this, women need to do that. But the truth of the matter is, it is very hard to speak up in an environment where you don't feel it's permissible. And I don't feel like it's completely solved there yet. And there were times when I should have spoken up about something, and I didn't. And I chose, and what it ends up doing is then you can see the ripple effects afterwards, and the amount of people it affects because you didn't use your voice. And I will say this, if you are in this room too, if you're in a position of power, if you have decision-making authority, with that power always comes responsibility and accountability. And it's in your behavior and it's in your actions. And when we talk about the corporate world and company cultures, and obviously more companies are talking about this right now because it is You start to see the demise of CEOs, you see the demise of companies going down because of it. It's about not just speaking the words, right? It's about the actions you do behind them, and that is just really, really critical. So I don't know if I answered it. I could digress.
Abby, talk to me about failure.
Well, I've got a lot. We don't have enough time for all of the failures. I think one of the most important things about failure is, again, it is a mindset. We women, we have been made to believe that we need to be perfect because of the statistics. And men get to fail up, like Michelle Obama always says. But we have to actually stop believing that to be true. Even though statistics are pointing us in that direction, in order for us to actually make real change, we actually have to say to ourselves, all right, failure is the fuel. The failures of my life are the things that actually made me and forced me to do something different. All the most successful people I've ever met are the ones that think more about their failures than they do about their successes. And I think once and for all, we just have to forgive ourselves as women that we have fallen victim to so many of these things that have kept us back. But now that we're talking about it, it's our responsibility. In fact, it's your birthright to change the way that you interface with your life, to change the way that you think about the failures of your life, to change the way you react and interact with other women in your workplace, to make sure that you do speak up so that you don't feel bad or you don't have regrets. I think that failure is a mindset. I think that, I was exposed to it on a daily basis as an athlete, and it helped me and it prepared me so that I could become, and it's a muscle. You have to work at it. You have to work at screwing up, stepping up, and making it better. Screwing up, stepping up, and making it better. It's just a process.
Each of you, in your own way, I think, have broken some of the old rules of work. And Abby, in your book, it's actually structured around old rule, new rule.
Yeah.
Here's how to get to the new rule.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about being pissed off and putting that anger into action.
Yep.
So what is one rule that we should walk out of here and break? And how can we turn our anger into action?
I think that, first of all, I kind of separate the book into chapters, and one of my favorite chapters is championing each other. So the whole idea is to be, the old rule is to be against each other, and the new rule is to be for each other. But one of my most favorite parts of the book, and the thing that I think where we're at and where we need to go as a culture, is that this can't be a conversation that just women are having. We have to actually have these conversations with men, invite men into the solutions. And like you were saying, we women, we have been given permission. Lean In gave us permission to go into the business world. I mean, what the problem with Lean In has done is that it's made women morph themselves into like a male version of who they thought they were. And they're like, I don't know why I'm so miserable at work. It's like, oh, I wonder. Like, women need to feel and have the permission to be themselves in their full femininity, in their full masculinity, if they want that. And we need to actually start requiring men to make some changes. Women for all of time have been being the ones, okay, women don't, we were talking about this backstage, women don't apologize too much. Well, hold on a second. Is that really what we want? Like, that's something that I actually believe is really a strength of women. That we're able to say, my bad, I'm sorry. How about we actually start saying, men, you need to apologize more. I have no idea what the question was. Oh, yeah, champion each other. I get going, y'all. And also what fuels me is coffee. So
Cindy.
What was the question?
What's a rule we should walk out of here and break?
Well, one story I want to say on top of what Abby said was one failure of mine. We started a leadership development program for women to find high potential women inside the company because we thought, oh, this is what we should do, right? And we piloted with a group of executives from the product and engineering world inside the company. And we got their feedback. What is it that you want? Where you need help? And midway through, I checked in with most of them, and the common feedback was, it feels like we're in this program, just women, because we need to be fixed. Like, shouldn't this just be a leadership program with men and women and the high potential amongst the entire company? Wouldn't that be more beneficial? And I'm like, duh, right? Duh. It's like those little things that you have to okay, I got it. Because it's not about women needing to be fixed or you need to do that. It's about, well, let's talk about what we all should be doing. I think my one, I wish earlier in my career I had taken more risk. I wish because some risk will lead to failure, but again, it's what you do, what lessons you learn from that will help you elevate and grow and develop. And my mentor told me something very smart to me once. He met me my first day at Salesforce. This is George Hugh, who's now the Chief Operating Officer at Twilio. And on day one, I started supporting him because I think I got brought in as a manager of recruitment. I was supporting his organization. 6 months in, he said, "You're going to be running HR one day." I said, "You're high, you're crazy, no way." And he said, "You know what? You have to be aspiring to do more. You have to grow, you have to develop, you have to think you can do it. And you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable." And that was the wisest thing he said to me, because every time he's like, don't run for the hills every time it gets uncomfortable. Don't find every excuse in the book why you can't do something because you're not comfortable. And, he's the one that eventually pushed me into that HR space because he said, it's your time, but you need to do it. You need to feel confident to do it. And so that's my parting word is it's something that I've held very close is every time I get uncomfortable, get comfortable.
Yeah, that's good.
We're going to go to questions. I believe there are a couple of mics that are going to be passed around. We have 15 minutes to do so. So I would remind you to raise your hand and also to keep in mind that a question ends in a question mark. And while we're getting started, so please raise your hands if you have questions. Mics will be roaming.
Be the brave one so that we're not all awkwardly sitting here silent. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Oh, who has a mic? I have
Sorry,
a mic.
go ahead over here.
My name's Heather. I'm with an organization called W North, and I was really interested to hear what Cindy said about when you brought all those high potential leaders together, and there was that discussion around, is this leadership, should it be for men, or should men and women, or women separately? I'm really interested in your perspective on if there is a leadership style or an education that we can direct towards women that will really help elevate them. So almost like a business case for separating women and teaching them leadership development. Is there a business case for that? Is there merit in that? And Abby, if you feel free to comment on that as well.
I wrote a book on it, and I also have a company that I run a leadership development company that goes into the corporate world. So I think that number one, it's really important that both things can be true at the same time. Women can work on developing their leadership skills in an environment that they feel confident and comfortable in, that's oftentimes more homogenous, right? And then having the men and facilitating a crossover event, right? Having them be worked into the program on some level. We do both. We do women only. We do both. And what I have found is that oftentimes, and this is very dependent on where these women are in the structure of the company. If they are young executives, that's a different story than women who've been around the block, right? Most women who've been around the block, they can get right into a program that they're alongside men and go through this development structure. A lot of new women into the working world, young women who haven't had that experience, sometimes need to have the sistering to their left and to their right to feel that confidence. And you can finish because you're more experienced in the HR world.
So one takeaway from that cohort, those women that I started to get the feedback was they did want to feel a sense of community though, still, right? And there were certain things they would be hesitant to be amongst men in the same type of program. And I'll just even speak for my own case. When I became the head of HR at Salesforce, one thing that I had to learn to do was, oh my God, I have to speak in front of the entire employee base of 30,000 at the time employees. I have to go present in front of 500 of our top executives. I have to influence, inspire, and motivate. All these things where I'm like, holy shit, you know? I didn't know. No one was helping me with that. And a lot of women who start elevating up, all of a sudden they have to do the same thing. And you're always judged in a different way, you know? I always felt like when I got up to present and whatever lighting was going on or whatever, it was like, well, what are you wearing, right? How does she show up? Like, people get fixated on little things and they ignore whatever is coming out of your mouth. So all these things, we all battle them. They're like these little demons inside your head. And I realized, like, that is something that we can do within a cohort, for example, right? Because we all face it. Yeah. But we don't feel like comfortable talking about it, right? So that's just an example of something. There's always ways. I think for me, it's also about listening and really trying to understand, what is it that you need help with? Where do you want us to help you? Like, and really listen to what they're saying, give them permission to speak about whatever they want, that they feel comfortable to tell you, and then act upon it if you're in that position to do so.
Hi. It's great listening to you today. Thank you so much. Abby, you talked about internalized sexism, and I'm becoming increasingly aware of my own internal voices that are telling me to comply with a culture that's telling me to become invisible. So as I get older, and I'm looking at 50 in a few months, I'm really aware of the fact that in corporate culture, if you don't reach CEO or EVP by the time you're 50, you know, they want to sort of slough you off. And that's not true in my company necessarily, but it's definitely true in the culture. And I wonder if you have any advice for fighting that, not only for yourselves, but on behalf of all women.
It's beautiful, beautiful. I think we have to, before we try to solve this big issue, I think we have to get really honest about why it exists. All of us were read fairy tales when we were younger, right? And, you know, the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale is a metaphor that I used in the book Wambach. And I'm obsessed with flipping the fairy tale mindset because little girls, myself included, were being taught to stay on the path, to be quiet, to don't be curious. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten by a big bad wolf, right? And in my experience, everything good in my life has come from when I ventured off the damn path. And I think a lot of successful women would probably agree with me. So it is not our fault that we might believe on a deep unconscious level that we need to stay silent, that we need to not ruffle the feathers, that we need to not make waves. It's what we were trained. It's a really good way to run a patriarchal society, right? And we have to fight against it. And the first and foremost way to do that is to understand how, in fact, you were affected by the patriarchy. What kind of internal dialogue do you have with yourself about what it means to be a woman in your life? And I think that when you start to get real honest with yourself about how you learned some of this stuff, to try to unwind and unlearn some of this stuff, I think you're going to get to a place where I got to on that ESPY stage, or in the hotel rather, where I was freaking pissed. You know, my wife jokes about this. She only respects 2 women right now. 1, you are either in an active coma, or 2, really angry, pissed off women. So, fight against the things that we were taught. Fight against that urge to stay silent. Fight against, encourage other women around you. And, you know, it's a real thing, too. I have many women who are in their 50s or beyond that have had to believe a total different way for the whole of their career. And they've been operating, and so there has to be a shift, and it might not be easy. But if you have people around you that are supporting you, it might help.
Well, I'm definitely pissed. Yeah. Like, I have that going for me. But I wonder if, because I do everything that I can to fight it, but there is structural change that needs to happen, and yes. I wonder if you can help with the structural piece of it.
Well, I'm doing the damnedest I can right now. But it's true, you know, the structures and the institutions that we all participate in were made for and created by men. And so I spent an entire career in a system that wasn't built for me to succeed in, but I was still able to find ways in which to succeed. One of the most important ways I was able to do it is because we stuck together and we fought for every damn thing we got, right? And really pissed off women make change. So whatever you can do to turn that anger into action, whether it be in your workplace or in your own personal life, that is the one thing that eases any kind of anger, any kind of heartbreak, right? Is actually putting your life into action and doing something about it. So maybe stepping up in your company or stepping up in your world that you're in and fighting for not just you, right? It's fighting for the little girl, not just you, but the woman who's going to come behind you and take your space. You know, I get really frustrated about this whole dogging on the millennial generation. I do, because I think that, man, my whole life I spent in service of trying to make the game better, trying to make the world a little bit better than when I found it. And then when these kids come up from behind and Alex is like, hey, we deserve more. And then me as the older player, I'm like put off by it because her experience is better. She has more than I got. It's just straight jealousy rather than being like, hell yes, that's exactly what I just worked my ass off for you to actually attain more, have more. That's how we're going to get better. So these are the things that you have to remember. You know, my dad always said, well, I had to walk uphill both ways in snow to school. And I'm like, that's just not physically possible. So, like, we have to also check ourselves as we age, whether you're aging into a different job or whether you're aging into a different generation or time of your life. Like, we're trying to actually make it better for the people who are coming after us.
Hi, my name is Julia. I live in Dallas, and I signed up right when I saw that you were going to be speaking, Abby. In addition to wanting to support Amy, I met her when we were pregnant with our third daughters, and she had this little idea. So I'm blown away by what Amy's accomplished. But your example that you and your beautiful wife are of a unbroken family has meant a lot to me, because I got sober a year ago. And
Congrats.
Thanks. It's fucking amazing. And I met my there she is, my beautiful there she is, a year ago. And after 12 years being married to a great man, we're now an unbroken family. And so you and Glennon are a total inspiration for that. And what Glennon said about, she knew it was right because it was the first thing she did for just herself, that everybody thought she was crazy and selfish. This is the thing that I know to be true. So what would be, to answer it in a question mark, and not to say that leaving your male partners is the thing that's, true, but
Unless
I
it's
highly
true.
recommend it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's pretty good. What would be the thing that you've done that was really that was seen as selfish for your career? And Cindy, too, you're incredible. That, if you have an example of something that was selfish but just, kicked ass for you.
Yeah. In my soccer career, everything that I did was selfish. Literally. Every piece of food I put into my body, every sip of water that I drank, everything in my life was completely selfish towards my goal. And in my mind at the time, I thought that was the only way I could be successful. So my biggest work since retiring is actually trying to unwind myself from this narcissism that I developed over the whole of my career. Is she nodding her head over there?
Shoot. Yeah.
And so, I think that selfishness is a word we women need to take back and need to start turning it into self-care. Because too often, selflessness, this is my wife's gig, so, she always teaches me everything. Selflessness is like the highest form of praise that women are given. Like, you were selfless. You were selfless. It's like, literally, you have no self. So we need to actually start working of putting our worlds and our minds back into taking care of ourselves first, right? It's putting the mask on, the oxygen mask on in a plane before you put somebody else's on. We have to take care of ourselves first, and I feel pretty fine about my selfishness. I've worked my way out of it, but everything good in my life has come because I gave everything to myself. I promised myself that I would do this thing, and I wasn't going to let something else get in the way. And that's a strength. That's a strength that not many women are given in terms of, we're all born with it, but we're not all allotted it. Not every person feels comfortable actually being a little bit selfish. Not every woman does.
I agree. And I do think, being selfish can be very healthy, right? Now, when you talk about self-care and your well-being, I think of just years where I did not take care of myself, right? I took care of my team. I took care that we were hitting the goals. I took care that we showed up well, that I showed up well. I was just completely focused. And I have an amazing man, husband, partner who's sitting over there, my husband, Jim. And he has been there for me. I think having a great partner in life that, calls BS on you too, right? A little bit. Like, I think it's true because you need that awareness in your life. And I can tell you where I'm spending my time now. Actually, my husband and I just went on a 3-week vacation to Spain. We just got back. We're enjoying life, right? That we have not had that time. He and I have decided we're both not going to work right now. We're both going to take the time. And I'm also going to reinvest in my family where I have not been present for them. And they gave me that feedback several months ago. They were overjoyed when I said, I'm not going to work anymore. My niece, my goddaughter, who's attending Santa Clara University as a freshman this year, was thrilled because she said, oh, thank God, because you've not been present. You take us to lunch, you check the box, you come for holidays, but you're on your phone. You're never present. So just remember, take good care of yourselves, right? Because I think this also showed up in how I led. I led a team where I have working moms, single parents in some cases, and that is all a trickle effect down. It's all a trickle effect. Not everything's an emergency. Not everything's priority, 0. Not everything is on fire, but it definitely showed up I had the aha moment. I'm like, oh geez, this is not just affecting me at home or with my family, this is affecting me at work. So just remember, self-care is very, very important.
Cindy, Abby, thank you so much. I have one last question. One last question. Can we join the wolf pack? Are you taking applications?
Everybody's
I brought my
in.
resume.
Everybody's in. Everybody's in. But here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you how to do the wolf pack. You got to find people in your life and do life with them. There is no such thing as life-work balance. There just isn't. It's life. And we need to figure out how to do life right. So if you've got a community in your neighborhood, if you have a community at your work, find the people and do life with them. People who will challenge you and hold you accountable and call BS on you and challenge you and push you forward and inspire you and motivate you. Those are your people. Find them and keep them for life. Thanks you guys for coming.
Thanks,
Really appreciate it.
everyone.